Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're connecting from. Thank you for joining us on Money Matters Live. Today, I'm excited to have everyone. Thank you for joining. We have our guest. She's a guest I've been on this show more than once, but she's coming back to tell us on how we can write the reporting of grants. Yes, it's easy, it's good, you get grants, but it's not just about getting the grants, but also the reporting that has to do with you, whether you're going to be getting the grants or you're going to stop it. Because if you have a good grant writing, you're sure that the company who is sponsoring and supporting your ideas will be there to give you funding every time you need the funding. And you know that grant itself is free money that we get from the government. So let me just tell you about Money Matters and myself. Money Matters is where we come. It's just a movement where we come talk about how we can, empower ourselves, financial discipline, financial planning, and financial literacy. And today we have no other person than Melcina Felix. She'll be taking us on a ride on grant reporting. And before we go on, I'd like to just introduce myself. My name is Sandra Oko. I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team Member, Coach, and Speaker Trainer. I'm a sales expert of over 20 years and have been in the IT industry for over 20 years. I'm also in Toastmasters as the Vice President of Public Relations. And I just received the Presidential Lifetime Award. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be alive today. And so the next person you get to see is Melcina, who probably will be doing our introduction. So welcome, 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 welcome. So the next person you get to see is Messina herself. Messina, I decided not to introduce you, so you can take the introduction and start from there. Just introduce yourself and just move and flow into the class of today.
Oh my, I didn't bring anything in writing, so I guess whatever I say is going to have to flow from my head. Yes,
Yeah.
good evening, everyone. My name is Melcina Felix, and I am currently a real estate agent in the state of Atlanta, as well as a tax preparer. I did accounting for approximately 30 years and have worked in that industry both in corporate America as well on Wall Street, as well as private sector, which is a nonprofit organization for the last, I believe, 20 years. I did 15 years in corporate America and have an extensive accounting background. As far as my family is concerned, I have a wonderful family, have been married also. I have an extensive background in matrimonial experiences for 43 years. I just celebrated my 43rd anniversary as a married person. I have four children, two boys and two girls.
Awesome.
I am also a member of the clergy, ordained member of the clergy, have been serving in that capacity since 2005, but an evangelist and ministering the gospel all over the world, including 13
Awesome.
countries in Africa, been to many of the Caribbean countries, have been to Australia, New Zealand, and a plethora of countries all over the world. So, this is a brief synopsis of my life, of who I am. And right now, we have done grant writing for approximately 20 years since we started working in the nonprofit sector, and would like to talk to you about, or further talk to you rather, because we already had two presentations about grant and grant writing, receiving grants, applying for grants. So tonight we will talk to you further about how to do good grant reporting. And yes, now that you have done your research, you have written your grant, and you have proposed a stellar grant application. You got a letter in the mail. Hey, you received the grant. Moment of celebration. Congratulations to you. Your grant award has finally arrived. You were chosen to be a recipient of a grant. Could be from government, it could be from a nonprofit, foundation, whatever it is, you're grateful to have the money at this time. And there is always a moment, and it is always an auspicious occasion and a moment for celebration. After the award and after the initial award and all the dancing, of course, you're going to call your team to inform them that you got the grant. Then what next? That's the question. So, your next step would be to basically find out what the funder needs from you and also what you need to present to the funder. Usually when the funder sends you a letter of award or, stating or informing you that you received the grant, there is usually a package that comes with that. Within that package, there's detailed information as to what your next step should be. But you don't always want to wait on the officer or the award donor to tell you what to do. You want to show them that you're a step ahead. So your responsibility would be to kind of do a little research and find out what is it that the recipient or the donor, sorry, wants from me. And the first thing you would do is to do your research, do the background, go into the donor's website, find out about the grant. It's usually available to you. For instance, the federal government, they would have sent with the award letter where to go to get that information. So you would go and get that information and update yourself. Then you would do a call. You would make a call to the donor to express your gratitude to them. Okay, you could make a phone call. Some donors prefer that you write, like the federal government is a little more extensive. If you're getting like a foundation grant, you can just call and say thank you for the $25,000, or sometimes it could be $75,000 that you awarded us. We would like you to know that we are grateful and we'll continue, partnership with you. We are grateful that you chose to allow us, this funding. But if it's a government grant, usually it's not that simple. Sometimes you will call to express your gratitude. But one of the main things they usually want is that sometimes they even want you to put it in a newspaper near you stating that they funded you. Some of them might require that, and some of them might require that you put it in a newspaper, but not say who they are. They rather remain anonymous, where you do not mention who they are, but you can kind of brag about getting the grant, from that person. After you have expressed your gratitude, you want to also invite that donor, inviting the donor to your site or to see the work at hand, give you more credibility in a sense, because it lets them know I have nothing to hide in a sense. So you always want to say, I would like to know or to invite you at any time to stop by the site and, come and see the wonderful. If you didn't do it in the beginning, at least somewhere midway, you could always invite them. Now, let me express, not that they would not do it anyway, because one of their responsibilities is to always visit the site. Some of them might have done it prior to awarding you the money. Some of them will do it, after the award. But you also want them to know, I have nothing to hide. Feel free at any time to stop by and come and see, what's happening around here. Next, you have to be on the lookout for your letters. Make sure you are consistently checking out your emails, your mails. This is a time very critical time, because the donors are going to continuously correspond with you, whether it's sending you additional information, whether it's asking you for more documentation, because sometimes they might have awarded you the grant, but there was certain documentation that were not as relevant to giving you the grant that they didn't ask you for. So following that, they might ask you for certain documentation. So you want to always and consistently check your mail and your correspondences to ensure that you do not miss. And I emphasize that please do not miss not one email, one letter from the mail, because it's critical to you following the instructions that are provided for you on the grant. Also, for the smaller foundations, sometimes they may just send you an award letter, like for between $5,000, the corporate grants, 15,000, or even 25 to 50,000. Sometimes they might not send a separate letter, but they might just send you the award letter with a check in there. Who wouldn't like that? Of course, that's instant cash. And we've been followed by instructions as to how you are supposed to do your vouchering and reporting on the grant. Those are not as extensive as the government grants. So usually it requires you spending the grant and then sending them the vouchers, the invoices, the payroll documentation showing that you had the employees and how much you spent for each employee and their fringe benefits, etc., etc. And then you submit probably one or two reports. Some of them might require more reports. They might do just one site visit, but let's talk about the extensive federal grants and the state grants. These are going to require a lot more from you. First of all, during the time that you receive the award, they are going to send you instructions for training. That's the one good thing about receiving government and state grants. They usually provide you a lot of training. So you and your team, especially those who are involved in implementing, the grant and the rules, the program director, for instance, your financial person, the person who does the budget and maintains the budget, and who maintains your finances. Like, for instance, I was this chief financial officer on my job and was required to attend every meeting. Sometimes I would take my staff with me because they're the ones who do the detail work while I do the supervision and ensure the training to them. So I would bring them with me if it was convenient. Otherwise, I would go learn everything and then come train my staff. So you have to ensure that you do not miss these trainings because usually they are very, very minimal. It's approximately 2 to 3 trainings. If you miss the first one, you miss the second one, sometimes it's usually 2. So you really don't want to miss it. And if you feel like you are going to miss it, send a staff, somebody that you can rely on to communicate effectively to you what was, taught or what transpired during your absence in the meeting. So that's going to happen. You're going to have your training. In addition to the training, they are not going to leave you dry or without, assistance. They are going to provide you with what we call an officer specifically dedicated to you. Each organization is going to have an officer. They are going to tell you who the contact officer is. That's something very relevant for you to know. Because trust me, you are going to have so many questions and so many things that you do not understand, specifically if it's a new grant that you have never encountered before. Now, each of the government grant, even though sometimes you have federal grants and you have more than one, I can guarantee you their reporting is going to be totally different. One strong piece of advice is to have an accounting system, a financial system, a very strong financial system. Number one, they might have already noticed because your audits was already presented to them during the application phase. But you want to continue to maintain that because even if you showed a strong finance and you never had that particular grant before, you are going to need an accounting system. Usually for fund accounting. And believe me, fund accounting is so extensive and so, how would I put it, rigorous that a lot of accountants, like the accountants like me, we studied accounting, but my friends tell me, I don't know how you do it. I would never do it. And some of them tried and didn't succeed. because, like I said, it's a different ball game altogether. The general ledgers, you have to set them up and you have to put a fund. That's why they call it fund accounting. Each funding source that you get, for instance, if you get a source, a grant from Department of Labor, if you get a grant from the state, these are all funding sources. You cannot mix the two funds together. Some of them will even require that you have separate bank accounts for each funds. You know, if it's a large organization that gets billions of dollars in resources from the federal government, or not those big museums and stuff where their funds are in the billions of dollars, they would require that you have a funding, an account in your general ledger for each of your sources. They also want you to have, like I said, a bank account, you know, for each fund so that you could show them how you reconcile the accounts. And it's easier for you in that sense anyway, because when you have to do your audits, having a separate account for each grant, you are going to be able to trace, you know, or track. In your general ledger also, some of the general ledgers, I often use QuickBooks or Fund Easy, or, you know, some other type. I've used about free software so far. These will allow me to put my budgets. Some of them allow you to put your budgets in there and can do your budget reconciliation. Now, remember I said before, now that you have gotten the grant, if you had like $50,000 or $5,000, let's say, to supplies, and while spending the money, you realize, oh, we really don't need all these supplies. One good thing about those funders is they allow you to do what you call reallocation of funds. What that is you can take some money from supplies and you can put it into travel, because you realize at a certain point you are not going to be able to spend all this money in that certain line item or category. So you can always, you are allowed to use funds and move it around. But with federal government, when you move it around from the original budget you give them, they are expecting you to give what is called an explanation. And you are going to have to fill out additional forms called budget modification forms. Because what you have basically done when you remove a line item and you put it into another line item, you have modified the budget. So once you modify the budget, they need you to explain why you modify it. For instance, many times I had to remove, you know, money from salaries, and I had to put it into other line items, maybe conferences that we didn't anticipate the students going to. So I would often tell them we have removed so and so $50,000 from the salary line to the travel line, because we had more expense in that line item. We did not anticipate that happening and so forth. And sometimes we had to lay off people, or people quit jobs. Okay, so I had Sandra working for me. All of a sudden, she decides she wants something better. And this is a work state, a free, you know, you're free to leave, especially in New York where I worked. An employee is free to quit a job when they want, and an employer is free to lay you off whenever they want. So people do leave jobs sometimes, and as they leave, you are going to either replace the position, but if you feel like you have sufficient staff on board to carry on the task, and you feel like taking that money that you had allocated to that employee into a different category, it's allowable. We say it's allowable. Okay, so you're free to do that, but you are always going to have to give an explanation. You cannot just take it from one line item and put into the next line item. So a critical part of maintaining your grant is to maintain a great accounting system. Okay, make sure you have your system, because they are going to come and audit you themselves. Not only do they want you to get an independent auditor once you're getting over $750,000 in grant, but they themselves, meaning the agency that has funded you, is going to hire their own independent audit and come to audit your organization. So you want to always make sure. I spoke about the contact information before. You want to ensure that you have that contact person, because as I have aforementioned, you are going to make a lot of calls, especially if you are new to that particular fund. You could be in nonprofit, or you could have received several funds before. That does not guarantee that you will be able to maintain that grant that you just the new grant that you receive, because the requirements may be different. The reporting may be different. Some of them require that you just go into a system, put in the amount that you're, reporting, and then close it. Some of them require, for instance, I had a grant from the Department of Youth and Community Development in New York. And that grant, sometimes I even wondered why we applied for it, because the amount of work you did, sometimes you often wondered, is it even worth it? The money was good. Sometimes they would give us $500,000, but the amount of work we had to get. And that grant, first of all, they required, initially when we first got it, they require that you spend the money first. It's called a reimbursement system. So you would have to go ahead and spend all that money and then apply for them to reimburse you the funds. And in order to get
That means you're talking about just use your own money.
yes, use your own money. That's why leverage resource when you're applying for the grant is good. They want to know you have some kind of funds on hand. So when you get a reimbursement grant, you have to use your own money. The good news is, prior to my leaving in 2018, they started sending us what is called an advance payment. And that was good because people started complaining that sometimes it's very hard for them to take cash that they have on hand to spend for the grant. And, and some people were left out because they could not meet that requirement. So sometimes they will send you an advance to start spending on the grant, but many times they may not send you anything. So you have to use your own money, spend it, and then they'll give it back to you. Then when you apply for reimbursement and getting it back, the amount of information they would ask, for instance, imagine you having about 50 employees or 100 employees on a job, and you have to put salaries, for instance, for each of these employees on a grant. So we would have to go, and then you have to not only put their salaries in their worksheet, we would have to create an Excel spreadsheet and put the salaries in their template, but we would also have to provide them with the payroll binder, the payroll backup documentation from ADP or whoever your payroll company was who prepares your payroll. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But once you have the money, at least your organization can continue to run and you can serve the community. You feel a sense of gratitude and satisfaction. And not to mention, you have staff that can, once you train them, they are able to help you maintain and sustain. So that's one thing about, government grant, that you are going to have to maintain, like I said, a highly sustainable and organized financial system. You're not only going to have it on the computer organized, where you have each separate grant, you create an account for each separate grant so that when the cash comes, you put it into that grant. When the expense comes, you remove it out of that grant. But you are going to have to maintain a critical filing system. Your backup documentation, everything that you send to get reimbursed, when you do your reimbursement, you are going to put it into the spreadsheet. You are going to send your backup, everything that you have sent for that reimbursement. And when you receive the check, they will in turn send you a check. You have to attach them together and make sure you have a very, very steady filing system. Because when you come, the auditors come, they are going to go into your file. You don't know which file they'll call you for. Sometimes they may send you in advance, I want this person's file, I want that person's file, I want that employee. But sometimes they may not give you any advance. When they get there is when they'll start asking you, or randomly, because that's what auditing is about. It's never previous preparation. It's usually a random thing where they'll just call and say, get me Nesta's file, or get me Sandra's file, get me her social security backup, get me this, get me that. Okay, all employees have to have, they'll send you into the HR file also to audit and make sure whatever you stated during your application is, is correct, okay, or adequate. So
Okay.
you'll have to do that. We spoke about the training, implementing the grant. Your program, when you've received the grant, you are going to have to stay on top of your program manager, because just as your financial aspect of the organization has to be A plus at its best, your program, because remember what helped you generate that fund is not necessarily the financial department. It was the program that enticed them. It was the service that you said that you were rendering or giving out to the community. That's what really attracted them and made them want to give you the fund. So there's going to be a separate program audit as well. They're going to come on site to ensure that the number of recipients that you said you were serving is what you are serving. Okay, so you are going to have to stay on top of your, as an executive director, if you're running the organization, you want to make sure every day if a recipient comes in to receive from your organization, you want them to sign, you want them to put, or you want to have a record of what you gave to them. All right, showing the donor that you are making use of their funds. You want to ensure that you have critical people in place, not just people who just come to work and are lazy and are not doing what they're supposed to do in the program, but you want to ensure that the program is being highly maintained. They are a stickler for that. So if you have people or inadequate staff that you feel are not meeting the demands or the requirement, that might be a time for you to consider, is that the person that I want in charge of my program? The program has to be running effectively. You must have a central place to manage the program. You can't get all this funding and stuff, and when they come, you're saying, oh, some of the program is over here, da da da. You could have different segments, but there must be a central headquarters. That's what we often call it as individuals. So you need your central place. Like I said, you need to stay on top of constantly evolving grant requirements, because sometimes things might change and they might send you a letter stating that they want additional requirements, or so you have to stay on top of that. Maintain accountability over your award management. We talked about that before. Make sure you have the tools to streamline your performance management. That's what I was saying a while ago. Ensure that everybody you serve in the program, how they're performing. If you say your goal or your mission was to bring this young 17 to 24-year-old off the street or from the prison, and our ultimate goal, because there's always an ulterior motive. You have a vision and then there's a goal. So your mission or your goal is to ensure that they graduate and get their GEDs, which will ultimately lead them to other higher learning, institutions. You want to show that. You want to show the testimonials coming from them. And so you want to maintain all of that. You want to maintain the attendance sheet, showing how many people are truly attending, and have the students don't just write, because anybody can write names, but they want to also see that the students are signing the attendance sheet and that they are physically present. Because like I've said before, remember, these are taxpayers' dollars that they're handing over to you. So they want to ensure that you are a good steward of that taxpayer dollar. Okay, ensure you can effectively communicate with everyone involved in the grant process. Okay, you might have different segments. You might have some on base. You might have some people who are off base. So you want to effectively communicate. Let me give you an example. We had our base where we had our headquarters. Some of the program was being run there, but we had what is called a construction site. The construction site, of course, our space was limited. It could not be run within the institution or the school. So we had that offsite. But the construction manager had to report to the executive team as well as to me, so that we can know. Every day he had to come in and show that these students were in the program. Because if you just leave it up to him and you don't do follow-ups, when the month comes for you to voucher, you may not have enough students, or you may not have served enough students to get your reimbursement back, or the students were served and you can't get reimbursed because you have no proof that the students were served. So it is up to you as the person who's ultimately leading the organization to ensure that everything is in place. Ensure you have adequate administrative support to accommodate your workload. Sometimes we want the money, but we don't want to spend, and we don't want to pay our employees. But that's the one thing that especially the federal government wants to ensure when they give you funding, that you are ensuring that you have enough staff on board to be able to maintain the workload. You can't have
Yeah.
70
I want to
students.
find out how long do you have so we can wrap up as fast as possible.
Oh, okay, great. I want to wrap up. You want to wrap up as soon as possible? Okay.
Yeah, I want to keep it short so people can, take time to
Okay.
go through it.
Okay. So reporting, the agency monitors you. Like I've said before, they monitor your progress, your expenditures through various programmatic and financial reporting procedures. One of them is your audit. They are going to do your audit. I believe we had spoken about that before. They typically will send someone. I gave you a briefing initially. They will send some agency, not themselves. If they are from the city, they hire an independent person to do the work, and they are going to send in these auditors who are going to come. Prior to them coming to do the audit, they are going to send you a sheet letting you know what they need. But when they come, like I said, they will also do a lot of what is called random testing. Random testing is they're going to pick anybody from anywhere or any file to test and ensure that you are keeping up with the grant. Now, I want to talk to you about closing the grant. Okay? After you have expensed the grant and you have done all of your reporting, and
How
that
long do
comes
you have to wrap up?
probably about 5-10 minutes.
Five
Is that
minutes
it?
is okay. 5
10 minutes?
minutes is good.
Okay. So you are going to do what is called the closing phase, and that is very critical. Your closeout phase, you are going to send everything back to the government. You're going to show them the full year. If they gave you the grant for an entire year or maybe 2 years, when that 2 years come, your general ledger should have all that information: how you expense the grant, what you did with it, and we'll show all your expenses as well as all the income that you have generated from the grant. You are going to present that to them. You are going to go to that section of that initial award letter, or go to what is called your request for proposal. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to give to them before you close out the grant. After you send them all of this document that they provided you, or the requirements that they ask you for, you are not going to hear from them. Sometimes it could take about 6 months, it could take about 9 months before they finally say we are closing the grant. During that time, they will be doing their homework to ensure that everything that was required of you was done, and every documentation that was requested of you was sent or is on file. Until then, they're not going to close the grant. If you were missing any documentation, if there were any mishaps during the phase of implementation, they are going to eventually request that you send that to them. So, having said thus, it's going to be about 9 months, like I said, before you hear from them. Then they'll eventually say to you, congratulations, you have done a marvelous or a splendid job. Once that is done, the following year, you can assure yourself, or you could say to yourself, I know I'm going to get funded again because I got a great letter from my funders saying that I did an excellent job and I knew we covered it all. Now, let me make one last statement. Just because you did everything perfect and you followed every rule, recessions and other things might come into play, and there may be a denial, but let it not be because you didn't do anything right. You always want to know that delay is not denial. Okay, they might delay giving you a second grant because of circumstances that are beyond their control, because the economy went bad. Okay, even federal government does not always fund when the economy goes down, but you want to know that in the future your status with them is clean and that you are, open to receiving more funding. All right. So we want to close at that. If you have any questions, like I said, my number is 347-834-5880. You could reach Sandra as well, who will be able to get you connected to me. That will be it on grant application and reporting. We wish you the best, and we hope you go out there and get the free money that is, it's just
Awesome.
sitting there waiting for you to apply. Okay.
Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. I also want to thank our viewers on this show. Thank you for joining us. And it's been a very great and very short and precise presentation. I just have
Yeah.
a comment for you. You're always full of so much
Information.
marvelous details. I appreciate how you help others. That's from Deborah
Thank
Taylor.
you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm giving you all of this for free. Most people usually don't do it. But like I said, when you have a plethora of information, you need to deliver and help somebody else. And I'm always
Sure.
to do that.
So thank you so much. We appreciate you've
You're
had an
welcome.
explosive. If you're just joining, she's done like about two series. This is the third one. You have to go back watch the grant writing, how to apply, how to set yourself for success in getting this grant. And this is the very last one. I want to say thank you to our viewers. I also want to thank our guest, Kim Masley, for making out time out of our tight schedule. She's been, we had a lot of battle. We moved it from last week to this week. So much happened, but thank God we're here. So I want to say thank you for making our time. Until our next episode, do have a blessed and a
Yes,
restful
I
evening.
want to say before you close, Sandra, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. And hopefully we can work together. I do taxes, like I said, if anybody wants that, and there's several other things I'm involved in. It was a pleasure. I know my time is kind of very restricted, but it was a
Yeah.
pleasure, and I'm glad that people are enjoying the information.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate.
You're
Do have
welcome.
a restful weekend. Till our next episode, stay
And
blessed.
happy
Bye.
Thanksgiving to you all.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, and you know, yeah, enjoy your Thanksgiving break.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.